All right, guys, today we're going to do 1.6. I have a video for you. It's in your notes. You now have your notes packets, so you can be doing this along in your notes packets. I'll be checking those for NTI points. At the end of the video, I have multiple choice questions for you to answer in the private comments, and then I have 4 flashcards for you to make that you will show me for your NTI points as well. So let's dive in. We are in 1.6 in your packets, and this is called market equilibrium and disequilibrium. This is actually going to take us 2 days. Today we're going to do market equilibrium, and then when I see you next, or if there's an NTI day, I don't know, don't ask me questions, we're going to do disequilibrium, which is the second part of 1.6. This is a longer topic, but if you understood demand, which everybody did really well with demand, and supply, 1.5, which most of us did really well with, then you will get this. It's just putting it together. So, equilibrium is where supply and demand meet and where price and quantity are set. Suppliers will only supply so much at a certain price point, and demanders will only demand so much at a certain price point. So I want you to graph this on your paper along with me. Basically, you would have, in the blank space, you would have an X and Y axis, label it price and quantity. We're going to do theoretical here, so no numbers yet. We'll do numbers here in a minute. Where supply would be upward sloping, and we would label it S1, and demand would be downward sloping, and we would label it D1. So theoretically, the point where they meet right here is called equilibrium, and we don't need to label equilibrium unless on the AP exam they were like, label equilibrium with an E, then we would call it E1, but they very rarely do that. They usually just make you label supply and demand, so I'm actually going to get rid of that. So where that is actually the set price that is agreed upon kind of silently between producers and consumers. So this is P1. We go down here, and this is Q1. What does this mean? At this price point, demanders don't think the price is too high. They will demand. At this price point, suppliers don't think that this price is too low for them to actually make some profit. They will supply. So at that perfect point where demand and supply meet is called our equilibrium, and that's what determines our prices. That's what determines all prices in a free market or mixed market economy, which is what America has. Mixed market meaning we have free choices, but also the government does some things, which is what we'll talk about when we talk about 1.6. Okay, so that's theoretical. Let's do a numerical one, and I already have it done for you. So all I need you to think about is at this demand schedule, where we're here and then down to 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 here, makes that demand curve. This is a numerical graph. And this supply curve, where they meet, at what price point is, at what price is equilibrium. So I'm going to write P with a dollar sign, what price is equilibrium, and what quantity is equilibrium. So think about that for a second. All right. The answer is the price point can be found either by comparing the charts or by comparing this. So let's compare the graph first. Where they meet is right here. It's at 3 and 30. So at the price of 3 of whatever this is, like maybe gallons of milk, then producers are willing to produce 30 of them, and demanders are willing to demand 30 of them at this price point. It's not too cheap for producers. They're still going to make money. It's not too expensive for consumers. They're still going to demand that quantity. So our equilibrium is at price 3 and quantity 30. I could have gotten that from the graph like this, and on a graph we would represent it this way and call this P1, and we would represent it this way and we would call this Q1. And this would be S1 and D1. Or I could have looked at the demand schedules or supply schedules. So when I compare this to this, there is one place where they meet perfectly. Price 3, quantity 30, price 3, quantity 30. So I could have determined it from the supply and demand schedules as well. So here is what is going to occur. Something is going to change. And the things that are changing are something other than the current price of the good. If the current price of the good changes, then a price line is just going to be drawn. We're going to do that tomorrow. If something other than the current price of the good changes, then that is when the equilibrium, this dot right here where they meet, where the X occurs, will shift. So if the current price of the good changes, it would change quantity demanded or quantity supplied, like we learned. But if the something other than the current price of the good change, it's going to change those 5 reasons for demand, which was tribe, and those 5 reasons for supply, which was thing. It's a tribe thing. So I want you to real quick pause the video and write down really quickly in your notes. There's a spot for it for you to sit down and try and remember tribe thing without going back and looking and see how many you can get. So pause the video, go back, look. Don't go back, sorry. Try and write out these acronyms without looking. All right, here are your answers. So write in the ones that you didn't get. Remember our changes for demand, spell out tribe. Our changes for supply, spell out thing. So if one of these things happens, like popularity or the fabric used to make the shirt gets more expensive, increased education, the price is going to go down in the future, more buyers or more sellers. If those sort of things happen, then we are going to shift the curve just like we did in class, where right is more and left is less. Now, here is what like our order of events, supply and demand analysis. We will take a look at a graph. Actually, let me do one first, and then I'll come back to the rules. I'm going to do this one with you. So on your papers, follow along with me. I should see a bajillion supply and demand graphs on your papers when I check them tomorrow. So it asked me, what would happen to supply or demand for hamburgers if Americans' income increases? So I have to do a number of things. I need a supply and demand graph graphed right here with no changes, nothing happening, just a regular supply and demand graph. So I've already got my price and quantity labeled. I'm going to do an upward sloping supply. This is all theoretical. We don't have numbers. Label it S1. I'm going to do a downward sloping demand. I'm going to call it D1. I'm going to put a dot where they meet. That dot is equilibrium. I'm going to come over from where they meet, and that is my first price, P1, and go down from where they meet, and that is my first quantity, Q1. So at this theoretical quantity, hamburgers are being sold, and consumers and producers are supplying and demanding them at the same rate. So what would happen to supply or demand, we have to decide for hamburgers if Americans' income increases. So this is step 1. Before the change, draw the supply and demand, label original, equilibrium, price, and quantity. Check, done. The change. Does it affect supply or demand first? Let's talk about it. If Americans' income increases, does that change the flipping of the burgers? No, it changes who wants the burgers. If it's more about who wants it, that's demand. If it's more about who is making it, that's supply. So this is going to be a demand problem. So I'm going to circle demand, or you would write out demand. Now, is demand for hamburgers going to go up or down if Americans' income increases? I don't know about you, but when I make money, I go to the Taylor Bills, okay? So demand for hamburgers is going to go up. So I'm going to do up, or I'm just going to write D goes up, demand goes up, due to change in what? So we haven't even done the graph yet. We're still on this part. Does it affect supply or demand first? We did that. What determinant caused the shift? We have to go back to our tribe. We said demand, so we're going to only look at tribe. We're not going to look at thing because we said demand changes. Which one means income increases? Okay, well, that was an easy one. Income. So we have now determined the shift. Check. So due to change in incomes. So I could either fill out the fill in the blank or say demand went up due to change, delta, in income. Okay. Now, the next step in my process, on my little process slide that I'm going to go through again, is we have to take the demand curve and we have to increase it. Right is more. I'm going to do it in a different color, but I know you guys aren't working with colors on the AP exam or really even in class, so you got to be really careful with your labeling. So I'm going to take the whole demand curve. I'm going to move it to the right. Right is more. I'm doing it in pink so you can see the change better. The first thing I do is label it. It's the second demand curve, so I'm going to call it D2. And I'm going to give it an arrow. Here's a good Miss Keller tip. I put my arrows up at the top so they are out of the way because this is going to get messy here in a minute. Now, notice something. When I change that, this is no longer an X. It's as if this has disappeared. It's no longer there. It has shifted over. So if that one has completely disappeared, that's not our demand anymore. We have more income. We're demanding more. Our new X, our new equilibrium point is actually here. So I have a new E that if they asked you to label it, you would call it E2 because it goes with demand 2. They will very rarely do that. So I'm not going to junk up my graph more. So there's my new equilibrium. But didn't I teach you like 5 seconds ago that equilibrium determines price and quantity? This is no longer my price and quantity. This is my price and quantity, and I need new lines indicating as such. So I'm going to go over with a dashed line, and I'm going to call this one P2. And I'm going to go down with a dashed line. I'm going to call this Q2. Okay? Now, something that I need not forget is arrows. I need to show a shift. You guys aren't working in colors, so they don't know that pink means new on your AP test and in class. You have to take that new price and show the shift, the old price, and show the shift to the new price. Point to the new one. Point to the new one. Show the shift. Okay? So this graph is now complete, except one issue. Over here, out to the right, where I've written out all this stuff or filled in the blank, I need to describe what happened to price and quantity. The way I do that is I literally look at it. Here was old price, here was new price. Looks like it went up. That was easy. Up. Or I just write P went up. Okay? Now here is old quantity. Here is new quantity. Shifted to the right. Right is more. That was an increase as well. And here's a little tip. Every time demand goes up, this is what will happen. It's going to be in a minute like you're going to have 4 multiple choice. Demand goes up, demand goes down, supply goes up, supply goes down. Every single time demand goes up, this is what's going to occur. You just have to figure out, is demand going up and what's the change? And you're going to basically have a copy in your mind of the right answer. So let's go through my little checklist again to make sure we've done everything. Before we started the problem, we drew supply and demand and labeled original equilibrium price and quantity. Then we decided, does the question affect supply, the people producing, or demand, the people buying? And then if we determine it's demand, then we'll go look at tribe and figure out which tribe reason. If we think it's supply, then we'll go look at thing and we'll figure out what thing reason. Then we will draw the increase or decrease. We will label the new equilibrium, determine what happens to price, P goes up or P goes down. Determine what happens to quantity. P goes down, quantity goes down, or quantity goes up. And so I have a little acronym. Y'all, I'm killing you with the acronyms. I swear after this unit, there's not that many acronyms. It's just unit 1. And it's actually up on my wall in my classroom. ACE, which in APUS stands for something different. So I'm so sorry, APUSers. ACE stands for axes, curve, equilibrium. After you do every single graph, you're going to check, did I label my axes, my X and Y axis? Did I draw a new curve with labels? And did I redo my equilibrium with labels? I really should make it axes, curve, equilibrium, arrows, but that doesn't ring as well as ACE. Okay, so it's axes. Did you label your axes? Did you do your new curve with a new label? And did you do your new equilibrium with new labels? Another way of thinking about it is there are 9 to 10 things on this graph that changed. 3 new lines, 3 new names, 3 new arrows, and a little polka dot right there. That is wild that on this one little graph, 10 things changed. All right, let's do another one. I'm going to talk you guys through it. What would happen to supply and demand for hamburgers if new grilling technology cuts production time in half? So in this scenario, we draw the original graph, which take some time right now and draw it before I continue. Draw. Good job. It's beautiful. Make sure that you have your axes labeled, your curves labeled, your equilibrium. And then after the shift, you're going to check again for new curves, new equilibrium. So we have to first determine, does this new change that is other than the price impact the producers making it or the demanders consuming it? New grilling technology cuts production time in half. Okay, since it's talking about production time, I'm pretty sure this is about supply, right? So I'm going to say that S, supply, and does supply go up or down? Are they going to make more hamburgers or less hamburgers if production time is cut in half? They're going to make more hamburgers. Due to change in what? I got to think about now this is supply. I'm no longer thinking about tribe. Tribe is demand. Supply is the acronym is thing. So is this a technology? Is this human capital? Is this input cost availability? Is this the productivity? Is this the government? What is happening here? I said productivity. I'm going to say number of producers. Technology cuts production time in half. Pretty simple. It literally says the word technology. So you would say due to change in technology. I'm going to be lazy and write tech. If you were doing like a fill in the blank in class, and you would write due to change in technology. The reason I give you fill in the blank is I want you to get used to answering like that, but there's no fill in the blank on the AP test. So sometimes I'm going to make you write it out. Okay, so we're going to take the supply line. Here's the supply line, and we're going to increase it. Remember, right is more, left is less. So we're going to move this sucker to the right. When we move something, we need to give it a new name automatically, S2. I'm going to give it an arrow. Miss Keller tip, put your arrows up at the top. Point to the new one. And you see how I made my arrow kind of go down? That was poor. I shouldn't have done that. It goes to the right because right is more. Now, I have a new curve. I need to find my new equilibrium. This supply curve is basically not here anymore. It has shifted over. This one now becomes invisible. Where's the new X? Where's the new point where they meet? Right here. So I'm going to put my polka dot there, my equilibrium polka dot, and from there that determines my new price. I'm going to go over, and that's my new price. I call it P2 since it's the second one. I'm going to go down, that's my new quantity. I'm going to call it Q2 since it's the second one. So from old price, which is here, to new price, looks like a shift down. I'm going to go over here and say P went down, or I'm going to do the down. Okay, and then from old quantity to new quantity, looks like it was a shift to the right, which Q would be going up. Or I'll do a little circle. And that makes sense, right? If they cut their production time, then they're going to supply more. Their quantity is going to go up. And if there's more of something, then they can't charge as much for it. They got to sell. They got to get it out of the restaurant. So they're going to lower the price eventually. Okay? Now, some of these things, never mind. I'm not going to say that. Let's move forward. Let's do another one. Oh, and I'll always check my ACE. Did I label my axes? Yes. Did I label all my curves? S1, S2, D1? Yes. Did I label my equilibrium points? P1, P2, Q1, Q2, axis, curve, equilibrium. I'm good. Let me check my arrows. 1, 2, 3. I've got enough arrows. We're ready to move on. It is worth it to take 10 seconds and make sure you have aced your graphs. Okay, I'm going to go a little bit faster on this one. Hold on. How many have? Holy guacamole, Miss Keller. How many did I do? Okay, here we go. What would happen to supply and demand for hamburgers if the price of chicken sandwiches, a substitute, increases? Oh, dear God. Here we go. So we have to determine, is this a demander's buying it or producers supplying it? The price of chicken sandwiches, which are a substitute, increase. So this is not about them making hamburgers. It's about people buying chicken versus hamburgers. So this is going to be a demand. So I'm going to write demand. Okay. Would they be demanded more or less if the price of chicken sandwiches, which is a substitute, increases? So if you're looking at the menu and you're like, chicken sandwich versus hamburger, do I want to demand the hamburger? You look over the chicken sandwich price and it's super expensive. It's like, ooh, I will demand the hamburger then. Okay. So the price of chicken sandwiches is more expensive. I'm going to demand the hamburger. My demand for hamburger goes up due to change in, and if you look back at your tribe, a substitute would be a related good. Change in price of a related good. Price of related good. Okay. I'm going to go like hyperspeed. I'm going to take my demand curve. I'm going to move it up. I'm going to call it D1 with an arrow. Oh, D2 with an arrow. Sorry. But what if I had left that D1? Then when I come back and do my ACE at the end, I would notice that I got it wrong. So that's why ACE is super important. Okay, so I'm going to find my new equilibrium. Put my polka dot there. It says if this one doesn't exist, I got to find the X. There it is. From there, I'm going to go over. That is my new price. Call it P2. Go down. That is my new quantity. Call it Q2 with an arrow pointing to the new ones. And it looks like my price went up. Look at my pink price arrow. And it looks like my quantity shifted to the right. That is also up. That's an increase. I don't want to say up. It's an increase. Right is more. So in this scenario, demand went up due to price of related good and price and quantity went up. I want to check my axes curve equilibrium. Axes. Curves are labeled. S1 didn't change. D1 to D2 did change. Equilibrium. P1, P2, Q1, Q2. 3 arrows. We're ready to move on. Notice how that took me 10 seconds, and it is worth it because you lose points by mislabeling on the AP exam. All right. What would happen to supply and demand for if price of hamburgers falls from... We are not going to do that one. We are going to do that one a different day. Skippity-doo-dah. What would happen to supply and demand for hamburgers if price for ground beef triples? Boom, boom, boom. Okay, so who is impacted very first? The people making the hamburgers because ground beef is more expensive, or the people buying the hamburgers? Well, before people can buy them, they have to be made, and Taylor Bells has to buy triple in price hamburgers. So it's going to impact our suppliers, our producers first. So this is a supply problem. Supply. And are they going to make more or less if their cost is triple? They're going to make less. Why? Think of your acronym for supply, which is thing. This is an input cost. What goes into making the hamburger? Ground beef. Due to change in input cost, a major increase in input cost means we're not going to make as much. So I'm going to take that supply curve, and this is a new one. I haven't done this one yet. Whole supply curve and shift it to the left because left is less. Now remember I told you that supply is tricky. We're shifting it to the left, and it looks like it's going up the y-axis. It is going up the y-axis. The price is going up. But what is going down, left is less, is the amount, the quantity that will be made, and I'll show you. So new supply curve, label it S2 with an arrow. Oop, that arrow's pointing up. I don't love that. Try and keep your arrows like, you know what I say. Perfectly perpendicular. Okay. Supply shifts to the left. We find our new equilibrium, or old demand didn't change. New supply did change. Go over, that's our new price, P2. Go down, that's our new quantity, Q2. P goes up to P2. Q goes to the left to quantity 2. And all of a sudden, oh, we said input cost for this, didn't we? I can come over here and label. Price went up. Quantity shifted to the left. Left is less. That is down. So when a supply curve, that's called a negative supply shock. It's a fancy word. You should write it down. Negative supply shock. It means for some reason, suppliers can't get their hands on goods in order to make other goods, and it drives the price up, and there's less quantity. Think toilet paper during COVID a little bit. That was like a shortage issue. But lots of businesses during COVID couldn't get their hands on the things that they needed in order to produce goods. Even if they were open, they weren't able to produce at the max amount because other suppliers were closed, and then they didn't have input availability. Or they had higher input costs, and all of a sudden they can make less, and what they make less of, the price shot up on. Okay. Let's see if we are doing, yeah, this is going to be a demand down. Sorry to ruin it. Spoiler alert. And then we're going to move on to the activity. So what would happen to supply or demand for hamburgers if human fingers were found in multiple burger restaurants? That one's disgusting. Okay, so who does this impact first? The producer who lost a finger, or the demander, the consumer who's buying it? The main impact, the first impact, are people are going to go, yuck, we're not eating there anymore. So this is a consumer problem. This is demand. And will they demand more or demand less? They will demand less. So disgusting. We don't want fingers in our food. Due to change in what? Now this is demand. So if you were thinking about tribe thing, you'd be thinking about tribe. So this is an unpopular restaurant now, would be change in taste or preference. Literal change in taste. We do not want cannibalism. Taste preference popularity. So now I'm going to take that demand curve. I'm going to shift it to the left because left is less. I'm going to call it D2 with an arrow. And I try and make my arrows like nice and perpendicular because it is going down. Never mind. All right. Then I find my new equilibrium. It's like this one is no longer there. So where's the new X? It's right here. I'm going to go over. There's my new price, P2. Go down. There's my new quantity, Q2. And I'm going to have my arrows. Looks like my price went down. My quantity shifted to the left. Price went down. Quantity shifted to the left. Left is less because of change in taste or preference. Taste preference. I know I wrote it out twice, but here's why. I already told you guys this. I'm going to tell you again. You won't get fill in the blank on the AP exam. So we got to get not used to that. We got to do writing it all out. Writing P goes down, Q goes down. Now, why is that? Because people don't go to the burger restaurant anymore. The burger restaurant's going to have to lower their prices. Less people will go to the burger restaurant, and the new agreed upon price and quantity for equilibrium will be much, much lower. I'm going to axes curve equilibriate real quick. Axes labeled. Curves, I got S1 didn't change. I got a D1, I got a D2. Equilibrium, I got new dots. I got new P2, Q2, Q1, P1, and I got arrows. I'm good. This graph looks good. Okay. So here is your job. I have a job for you to do on paper, and then I have multiple choice questions you're going to answer in the private comments, okay? So this job, I will check and make sure you did it when I see you next, because we are going to play a game called Flashcard Frenzy. It's a group game. You'll be competing against other groups. And basically, I need you to go ahead and make the flashcards for it so we can play it real quick in class when I see you next. So if you have note cards at home, you go for it. Note card it out. You need 4 note cards. If you do not have note cards at home, I want you to take a piece of paper, notebook paper, printer paper, the back of an assignment you'll never turn in, the back of a graded paper, as long as it's blank, cut it into 4 parts. So if this were my paper, I would cut it and then I'd have 4 flashcards. If you have cardstock, that'd be even better. But no cards would be supreme, but I bet most of you guys don't have note cards at home. So that's totally fine. All right, so on these 4 note cards, for each one, I want you to, we're going to make it kind of multiple choicey. Do A, B, C, D, really, really big. On each one, I need you to do a perfectly blank supply and demand graph where nothing has gone wrong. No tribe thing has occurred. So on this, you'd have upward sloping supply, downward sloping demand. Supply goes in the sky, demand goes down in the dirt. An equilibrium, a price, a quantity labeled P1, Q1, S1, D1, price and quantity axes labeled. Make sure it is perfect. In fact, when I see you in person, first thing I'm going to have you do is pass your cards to someone else, and we're going to critique your cards to see if your graphs are perfect. So make sure they are perfect. Do that 4 times. Once on the A card, B card, C card, D card. And then you by yourself without Miss Keller's help on the A card are going to increase demand. So I want you to take that demand curve. I want you to increase it. Show me what happens to P and Q with all the correct labels. On the B card, you're going to increase supply. Take that supply curve, move to the right. Right is more. Do all the proper shifts. Do axis curve, equilibrium. Check, 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 because your friends are going to check it for you in person. On the C card, I want you to do demand going down, demand decreasing. And then on the D card, I want you to do supply decreasing. So I told you, it's kind of like multiple choice. There's only 4 options. Make me 4 flashcards that show me that. Make sure they have a multiple choice label. Okay? Now, speaking of multiple choice, that's your like on paper activity. In the comments on Google Classroom, I want you to comment your answers to these multiple choice questions. Not using the flashcards, just comment and answer. So this is, oh crap, what am I doing? This is number 1. Read it, pause, answer it in the comments. This is going to be number 2. Read it, pause the video, answer your best in the comments. This is going to be number 3. Pause the video, read it, answer in the comments. And that's it. We'll do the rest of 1.6 when I see you in person. And we're going to play Flashcard Frenzy when I see you in person. So make sure those flashcards are good.